All right, guys, we are live and welcome back for another episode of the Weekly Reader or whatever we're going to call this. We got to get these names right. We have some good stuff to talk about. We need to come up with a really good name and some segments. But before we do that, there's a lot to talk about. It's a full agenda, but I have a very important question to pose first and foremost. Brian, I need to know, why didn't you go and see Beyonce? Because I went, Kenny went, but you didn't go. So I'm not going to sit here and have a secret Republican or a secret Beyonce hater on the line.
Okay, so here's my biggest thing about why I didn't go see Beyonce was because number one, if I'm gonna go see any artist that I actually like,
You're gonna
I'm
go
gonna
see Carrie Hilson?
no, I'm gonna actually support them and I'm gonna be VIP. I'm gonna be, stage side. I'm gonna be, front row. I'm gonna be supporting. I wasn't ready to drop that money. I'll be honest with you. I was not ready to drop $1,000, $2,000 to be up that close. I'm also not the type of person, and this is just me, because I know people are gonna say I fucking sound elitist. I am not Gen Pop. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm gonna be in some VIP section. I'm gonna be, So I wasn't gonna spend that much money just to be fucking nosebleeds. I'm not doing that.
Brian, there are people in this world who sacrifice 2 months
Here we
of rent
go. Here we go on some
to
bullshit.
see Beyonce. I'm just saying, it's people in the world who did that. You chose
And that's
not to do
fine.
it. You could have
That's
done that. You
fine.
could have done that. And you could have been in Club Renaissance. You could have done it. You could have been right there on the floor. I'm just saying.
Maybe he's such an introvert. He doesn't want to be around that absorbent amount of people. Because there was a lot of people there. I don't like crowded spaces either, but I did it anyway.
It's
You
just so
did.
damn expensive. You know.
Well, I didn't have to pay for mine. God is good all the time. I was
Well, see,
blessed.
not all of us are blessed to have, a sugar daddy who gonna pay for the tickets. So I mean, I don't have that, Kenny. I'm just saying.
It
Wait
wasn't
a
no
minute. What do
sugar
you mean
daddy.
you didn't pay? What do you mean you didn't pay for your ticket? Who bought your ticket, Kenny?
Well, Dr. Avis wound up paying for my ticket. If y'all don't know, Dr.
Oh,
Avis is a panelist on the Roland Martin show. So, she said, "Hey, I wanted to gift you something with all the work that you do. You're constantly working all the time. I just wanted to give you a gift." And we had a good old time. Me and her was partying in the rain too. We was twerking in the rain. Okay, it was having a good old time. I
we
couldn't break
love
our
Dr.
spirit or
Avis
our
for that.
soul.
I know. Oh, well, that's a really good kind of place to kind of go into, uh, because on September the 4th, America celebrated the birthday of its brightest star, Beyonce Knowles Carter. On that exact same day, we had a video uploaded to TikTok by a TikTok user, Black Mr. Rogers, and this video showed a young Black woman who's been identified. Well, we have two names, but one of them is Rhodesia Osman. The other one is Ro Bache. I think that she goes by Ro Bache on social media, where this young lady had just been violently physically assaulted by a man throwing a brick. And in this situation for this young woman that has now gone viral, where she was hit with the brick, you could see other Black, supposedly hit in the head with a brick by a Black man, while other Black men stood around. And this has opened up like this massive flood of debate on social media. And I know, Kenny, we're going to talk about the role of toxic masculinity in politics and how it's possibly going to impact the results of the 2024 election. But before we go into that, I want to know from you guys regarding this situation with the brick. Do we think this is a multi-sided issue, or is it pretty cut and dry? Kenny, you can start off because it's your topic.
Well, I think it's a multi-sided issue. Number one, we've been seeing an influx of violence towards Black women and Black trans women as well, especially throughout the nation, where we're noticing a lot of frequent attacks. We literally just saw recently a heterosexual Black woman was literally accused of being trans, who was actually cisgender, murdered because they thought that she was a trans woman. What I'm seeing right here is, if a lot of people don't know the backstory, because I had to dig deeper into all of this, she's actually, Ro is actually a lesbian woman, openly lesbian. And the guy who asked her for her number, she declined. And because she declined his giving out her phone number, he decided to physically assault her because he was denied access to her. And I don't know exactly what's going on and why nobody decided to step in, but I feel that if we could literally throw a hat in the air and grab a foldable chair when we see another person who looks like us and somebody in distress? Why can't we hold our own people to the same type of standard? Because I notice when a woman is in distress, particularly a Black woman, we don't answer or we don't do a call to action when we see that amount of violence being perpetrated on a Black woman. I noticed there is a intersectionality between toxic masculinity, particularly because I'm seeing online as it plays, people are making every type of excuse. Well, she's a lesbian, so we don't have to protect her, or she's actually not truly a Black woman because she's Somalian. This still is a Black woman. So I'm seeing xenophobia play a part in this. And if anybody's been paying attention, at least in the social media streets, that they've held all types of spaces, basically questioning people's Blackness and trying to figure out, well, if you're not an American descendant of slaves, are you actually really Black? We're starting to have a lot of divisive rhetoric being spewed out throughout Black communities and Black safe spaces that have become not safe, to where we're actually excluding our own people and people who still share those same experiences and disparities as we do. Because maybe they might speak a different dialect, or maybe they might have come from a different country, but they still share our same melody and they still have to deal with racial inequality and police brutality. But for some odd reason, we're dividing ourselves because based off of where you so happen to fall in the triangle slave trade when it comes to slavery and white supremacy.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kenny, I think it's wild. I'm gonna try to, because it's definitely different for me to be looking at the camera and talking to you guys, like the computer, where I see you, and then looking at this camera that I've set up because I'm trying to enhance the quality of what I do on social media. But I will say, I think that it is absolutely disgusting that you have an entire movement of people on social media trying to invalidate anybody's Blackness. This is getting out of hand. This whole entire movement of people who are saying that certain people are not Black enough and aren't worthy of Black support from the Black community has got to stop. That's a big part of it. Number one, to say that this young lady is not worthy of support and protection from Black men because she is Somali or because she is a lesbian is an absolute tool of systemic oppression and the enemy. That's exactly what I think the enemy wants us to do as a community, so that we are never going to be able to prosper and we're never going to be able to advance. I was pretty disgusted when I researched this and started looking online. For me, it's like a black and white issue. Like, there is no question that this man assaulted her and she deserved protection. The community failed her in this moment. Black men who could have been there, enough Black men to subdue whatever or subjugate this man, were there. They could have taken action. They could have taken up arms. They could have definitely at least held him until the police got there so that he could be punished for what he did. All of that was disgusting. It is a very, it's a scary time for everybody living in America, everyone. I think especially for our Black women. And I really, it breaks my heart that we're at this place, but I think that we have to give our voice to it. I kind of ignored this and really, because it's just black and white. But when I started looking at the level of anger from Black men towards this woman, and in this argument, I was really shocked. And I'm seeing a lot of people on social media trying to completely invalidate her story and pretend like this didn't even happen. They're literally saying she made it up, that she hit herself. Like, people are literally making a case that this woman did not get hit by a brick. And that's the world we live in when we're living in an age of disinformation and misinformation that, the whole entire Trump movement has opened. We're living in a world where people can get on social media and say that President Barack Hussein Obama was not born in the United States. We're living in a time where people can get on social media and say that the January 6th insurrection happened. We are living in a world where we can say that this man who hit this woman with a brick didn't even hit her with a brick.
But the influx of violence towards Black women, I mean, a lot of this started even with the Megan and Tory case. We literally saw as people tried to invalidate Megan Thee Stallion's story, even though her medical records showed that she still had fragments of bullets in her feet. And even with a key witness, even Tory Lanez key witness put the gun in Tory's hands, and people still said that man is innocent, free that man. The problem is, when it comes to toxic masculinity, it trumps everything in our community, unfortunately. We have been so conditioned to protect Black men to where we forget that we have daughters, we have mothers, we have aunts, we have nieces. And all these Black women deserve the same amount of protection and the same amount of anger when something has happens to them, just as it does with any other black man that happens to. But I see that the scales are never going to be equal when it comes to gender, particularly when it comes to black women. As Malcolm X said, there's no other person disrespected on this planet more than a black woman. And I've seen this happen on the highest stage. Vice President Kamala Harris, Ketanji Brown Jackson, Michelle Obama. I mean, the list goes on and on to where we show absolutely no true respect for black women as they continue to excel in whatever profession they're in.
I agree. I do want to push back. I agree, but I'm going to push back a little bit in saying that we're prioritizing. I don't think we're prioritizing black men. Black men are not prioritizing black men. Like that's not what's happening. What's happening is that black women are doing what black women always do, and they stand in the gaps and they stand up for everybody. Black women are supporting and protecting black men. Black women are standing up and supporting black women. It's the black men who aren't supporting and standing up and supporting really anybody as a group in the way they should. That's what I think. I don't think black men are supporting black men to that extent. You do have some crazy movements on social media or some disappointing movements on social media that are becoming extremely unified in their grift and in their commitment to tearing down the community by trying to build up other communities as they're being paid by outside communities. But I don't think that black men are supporting even other black men to that extent. Brian, from a different lens, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I think this isn't something that we see that has just been recent, right? I think this is something that we know has existed for forever, right? And in terms of systemic oppression and why we are divided in the ways that we are, right? I think that white supremacy does a great job of making sure that we don't focus on the real issue, which is white supremacy, and dismantling those systems of oppression that exist, but rather us tear each other down and continue to gatekeep an experience that was created by the dysfunction of other people, right? That's why racism exists, right? Racism exists because white Anglo-Saxon Protestant men originally, and then propagated by politicians, scientists, pseudoscientists, right? These people who consider themselves experts, philanthropists, millionaires, billionaires in their time to continue to control the airwaves, control the media, control what has been published out and written out, to show that there are differences amongst people that are racial. And that's all race. And again, going back to the main concept, race is a myth, right? Race is a myth. Racism is real because it was made real, and it was created as a caste system and a hierarchical system to continue to oppress people into other folks. But race in it within itself is a myth, right? And so right now, what happens is because you are adjacent to, or because people can consider themselves adjacent to whiteness, they consider themselves better, right? And so they want to continue to have the most power in this hierarchical system without understanding the fact that there actually even is a hierarchical system, right? So you have people who look at others and look at the shade of their skin, or look at where they come from, or look at their ethnicity and their background, their cultural experience, and say, well, you're not black enough. But again, what is blackness, right? Blackness isn't something that has always been a thing that's been defined as a social construct, right? And so when we look at it from that lens, we're able to dismantle it. But again, white supremacy does a good job of making sure that we don't look at it in that lens. And that's why we have the problems that we have today, right? And so, I would also posit to say that one of the bigger problems that we should be talking about, and we know we're talking about it and how it impacts election season, is that you have people who are paid actors, right? That understand this division and how to sow it and how to use it as a distractive tool, and they capitalize off of that, right? And so that's why we talk about it a lot, and that's why you have these people who, again, we talk about all the time, who are fake FBA, ADOS, all of these different groups that are people or bots online behind stock images of black people sowing the same fucking shit, right? And so, again, we have to make sure that we're talking about the things that we need to be talking about, and we need to look at the root causes of the issues. Again, from a personal perspective, looking at this situation, that was a horrible experience that this woman had to go through. And yes, I would wish we would get to a point where Black men would, step in. But again, we have this, I think, sparks the bigger conversation, which is how do we get to the crux? And we get there by being able to zoom out and talk about the main issue.
Yeah, but and how do we get there, right? Like, as Kenny said previously, that toxic masculinity trumps all. So, Kenny, I think this is a really good place to transition into the discussion of toxic masculinity. So, I went and found like a definition to frame it, because I want you to talk to us about how this incident has sparked your realization of what's happening in the election season as a whole. And for those who are out there watching, give us some comments. Let us know your thoughts. It's not just us. Like, that's why we go live. We could sit here and film this conversation and then edit the conversation and clean it up. But we want you guys to like talk back to us and kind of let us know what your thoughts are. But what I found in this definition is, right here, again, toxic masculinity perpetuates harmful behaviors about suppressing emotions that oftentimes resorts to violence instead of resorting to communication as a means of problem solving and objectifying women. It negatively impacts men by limiting their emotional expression and range and their authentic selves. It also harms women by reinforcing gender stereotypes and the power imbalances. Kenny, how do you think, or you're supposing that this toxic masculinity in the Black community is going to impact the 2024 election?
It will. So if you've actually looked at, the framing that Nikki Haley is basically saying that, oh, a vote for President Biden is a vote for President Kamala Harris. So anytime you show any type of support for women, particularly any strong woman, or anytime that you're actually speaking up on women's rights, women's reproductive rights, women's issues, maternal health, any of those things, your sexuality get called into question. I don't know if you guys follow Consciously on TikTok, but he speaks on LGBT issues. He speaks on Black women issues, things that affect most everyday Americans, particularly in the African American community. But his sexuality is constantly called into question because he chooses to speak up on these issues as a heterosexual Black man who also is married and has a daughter. So anytime we actually try to uplift any woman that's seeking power, particularly Black women, for some odd reason, we get called into question our sexuality as a negative that will make us be like, oh, well, if you're supporting this person, then you obviously must be gay. And because people don't want their sexuality called into question, they pull back and be like, I'm not gay. So all of a sudden, now that becomes a deterrent. Now that becomes, oh, well, I can't support this person because now if I support this person, that means this is going to negatively mean that I'm supposed to be homosexual or I'm supposed to be sexually fluent. That happens a lot. I used to see this play all the time when I used to go into the barbershops early on, when people would speak up for people and say, oh, you shouldn't talk about that woman like that, or you should respect that woman and call her by her name, a sister. You shouldn't call her a B, a hoe, this, that, and the other. Anytime there was any respectability that was framed towards women, somehow your sexuality gets called into question. And now you have to protect that masculinity and you pull back. Now, as far as politics is concerned, the reason why I'm saying this is a big issue is all these divisive tactics are being, from, like you said earlier, Brian, a lot of people are being paid to sow these divisions. And as we heard in that tape from Steve Bannon, he said that Black men are going to be the reason why Republicans are going to be able to rule for over 100 years, because they play on the prejudice of Black men and try to use that as a tactic to be a deterrent and to deter others from showing up to the polls. We literally saw the most outrageous and egregious thing that I've ever seen in my life, where they had paid actors in Atlanta, Georgia, in Fulton, show up in support for Donald Trump as he was being taken into custody. And here's the thing that really frustrates me most about all of this is that they think that criminality and being Black somehow is synonymous to where they think that, oh, this is a good thing that Trump is getting his mugshot. That's relatable to African Americans because they're all criminals. They're all violent. They're all uneducated. They're all have a record. And this is what I mean. All of this stuff is going to play a part, and they're using these stereotypical tropes to hold us and keep us in a chokehold. And we're just gonna see how this happens. I'm hoping that we have more people speaking out on these issues. I hope we start exposing these FBA and these paid actors for who they are. So let's just go from there. Zach, or what happened?
I don't know what happened to Zach, but I want to jump onto that point too, because you're absolutely right. And I think people don't talk about that enough. And I think I should make a fucking video. Steve Bannon's video, caught on tape talking about how they want to get 80, 85, 90% of the vote, or want to make sure that they get a large segment of the population of the Black men population to be voting for, their side. Like that is something that people don't talk about enough. And there is a systemic playbook that they are playing from, right? There's a strategic strategy that they're using, right? So, for instance, if you have to ask yourself and look at the record. What policies have Republicans put forth for the Black community? The only thing that they always come up with is jobs. Well, Trump says it all the time. I've done more for the Black community in terms of jobs, right? Which is bullshit because it's not true. But one, two, you have nothing to run on now, because right now we have the historically, I think is a historic low in terms of Black unemployment rates, right? So whatever. But number three, unemployment is not the only issue plaguing the Black community. So when you hear them say that they have this, they're going to try to get the Black vote, you have to then wonder what policies are they putting forth to uplift the Black community, to move them forward. And if the answer is none, which it is, then you have to start thinking about, okay, so then how else are they getting the votes? And then you get down to what it actually is, which is when they pay these media people, right? Like the Shade Room, it's on site, Jasmine Brand, all of these other paid sources that get 90%. This isn't conspiracy. This ain't me making it up. 90% of revenue that the Shade Room gets is through advertisement. They are not getting, money, or they're not doing investigative journalism. They're not chasing leads. They're not doing, the work to find out should be the top story that we should report on. Looking for credible outlets to back up what they're reporting. They're just putting out what people are paying them to put out, and
now,
they're putting
Brian,
it as news, and they talk about it. Go ahead.
That's a big statement, right? So I've been waiting. Now I'm gonna tell. I've been waiting on you to give us the big exclusive on the Shade Room's financial standings of this 90%. How do we know that? Like, I need some validation, right? Because I know somebody out there might see this. Somebody may, we got like 3 people watching live. Okay, they might take this clip and send it right over to the Shade Room, and now hence comes a.
She likes to pop up in people's DMs.
Send it. If you are in this live within the sound of our voices, go ahead and screen record and send this shit over. Angie Nwandu, who is the CEO
Angie,
of
I want no goddamn smoke from your ass. Don't come fucking around over here.
Angie Nwandu is the CEO of the Shade Room. In 2021, I believe, she did an interview with the Hustle magazine. And in that, she was asked about her numbers. She said she doesn't report on numbers in terms of monetary value. She talked about how the fact that she doesn't talk about revenue. But what was also discussed was that there was an investor. I forget his name right now, but there was an investor, and we'll put the article out as well. As there was an investor who talked about the fact that the Shade Room was making 8 figures. And this was in 2021, where they had the most, and again, this isn't me saying it, Hustle magazine interviewed Angie Nwandu where she talked about this. So these are her words. This is something that has been reported. This is not alleged. She talked about it herself. She's the CEO of the company. And so when you talk about the money that they're making, she said, what we need to understand is that 90% of our revenue comes from advertising. So you have to ask yourself, what has been, and yes, they did mention in the article when she talked about that they talk about fashion. Right. And so you do see Fashion Nova, you do see some partnerships and some brands, but that's not all that it is in order for you to be making 8 figures. As a matter of fact, to the point where she paid back the investor, okay, and bought back the shares of the company so that she had more, more control over the company in terms of how and when and what they report on. And let's also talk about the fact that she calls it, and I quote, the Black newsroom. Okay, she calls it the Black newsroom. However, they're not doing journalism. So you have to ask yourself, you have to beg the question. You see what's reported. You can't just make false allegations against people and against companies. You see what's reported. She's talking about 90% ad revenue for the company. You're talking about an investor who said the company's making 8 figures. They got bought out because she wanted creative control. This is the same lady who was talking about, one of her, and in the same article, she talks about one of her heroes, one of her influencers is Elon Musk, who clearly knows how to manipulate media, right? You have to think about all of these things. And this was at a time when the Shade Room had the most followers, more than CNN, more than BuzzFeed, which, by the way, are, also the CNN is news, but BuzzFeed is, the gossip articles and all these different things. You have all these different things of media. They had the most in 2021, the most followers. So you have to think about reach. You have to think about followers. You have to think about how people are looking to use these accounts that have these many followers, right? These many millions of followers. You have to see how they're using these accounts to say, well, how do I get to the people? How do I get to the masses? How do I get my message out there? And we know for a fact, for the people, I'm talking about out of the three of us, we know for a fact that we have people who are from the politics side who send things to the Shade Room. We know that for a fact. So if we know that for a fact, it cannot be that just one side is doing it. Everybody got to be doing it because everybody want a piece of that pie.
Can you send that to the Shade Room?
Well, no. So how I'm just gonna be honest. I'm just going to tell the shit. Okay, so I've been in contact with the White House. Okay, so I have their number. I'm able to talk to them when I can. They actually send out a briefing to every news and media outlet, period. They let you know everything that the Biden Harris is doing. They give you sources, they give you receipts, they give you everything. All the work is pretty much already done. But I like to take a little step further, and I like to also look into other research as well, because some of the graphics is a little off. I just don't like the way their graphics look. But so I'll dig a little deeper when it comes to making my own content and stuff on it. But they send this information out to all media outlets. They choose what they want to report on. So it kind of frustrated me. And this is how I was able to get in contact with the White House and actually able to talk to a lot of the people there, because I felt it was a shame that they actually brought the Shade Room and invited them to the White House for a Black media event. And they're the ones who put out misinformation that Biden was giving out crack pipes. And they did it based off of a Fox News or a conservative outlet rather than what Biden's team actually sent to them. So they chose to do what they wanted to do whenever the hell they wanted to. Then they had to retract it back again, but they still kept the post up. The original post was still up with them saying that Biden is handing out crack pipes, knowing that this was not the case. It was actually dealing with programs that already exist when it comes to deterring people. So what is it called? It's a harm reduction program where people who are already hooked, they want to reduce the amount of people using the same needles and same pipes to where we don't have the same issue that happened in Indiana when Mike Pence was in charge and they had an HIV outbreak. So harm reductions have been around since the 80s, you guys, since the 80s.
Yes. And I had a doctor come on my show back in the Mental Divine podcast on the Patreon days, and he talked about harm reduction strategies and how that's been something that's actually been done, right? And we talked about it. I think we talked about it in terms of, a woman who, so the story was that where we anchored the conversation was this woman who was using, I forget what drug heroin? It was. Yeah, I think it was heroin. They were using heroin, but while they were pregnant. And so in some cases, harm reduction strategies say that it is better to continue. And I know it sounds crazy, but this is what doctors and the medical community say. It is better to continue to give them micro doses of the heroin while they're pregnant rather than continue to to cut them off cold turkey, because it actually does more damage. The withdrawals hurt the babies, bring you to a space of anxiety, bring you to a place of, a danger for the baby. So, harm reduction strategies is not a new thing. For anybody who's been paying attention, we understand. But again, going back to that same conversation, we know for a fact that there are different entities, and it's not just the White House, because the White House is doing what the White House needs to do to get out the message and send it out to all of the different news outlets. But that's not the only side that's doing it. And so it really begs the question. You have Republican operatives that play negatively and play dirty, and we know that too.
So I saw the Bryce. I don't know if that's the person you were talking about in the article. Bryce Roberts is a venture capitalist who Angie cites in the article, and so I just did a quick search
Go ahead,
to look at his
intellectually honest.
No, I'm just saying I'm looking at it. I just did a quick search. He lives in Utah. He's a fan of Taylor Swift. And that's kind of like the beginning of my search. But I'm going to continue to search just to see if there's any political affiliations or political leanings that may be identified. But when you're getting money from big funders and big vendors, you very well may be inclined, especially if you're identifying as you're saying you're a journalistic source, but your big funding comes from not from the people, but from the profits. It's a chance that you're going to be, easily skewed in what you do. So that's what's cited in that Hustle article. And so again, for anyone watching, wanting to kind of say, well, what's their sources? It's you can just simply type in Hustle Magazine, Angie Nwandu, The Shade Room. And it's a really informative article that breaks down their formula for success, how they did create a platform that is larger than CNN in terms of and MSNBC and all the other platforms in terms of news, and how they are seen as America's Black newsroom.
And so what the fuck are we talking about? And so again, this isn't me saying it.
Well, what we're talking about is an environment that's ripe for misinformation, right? Like I'm saying, like, right. So they have created the perfect platform to misinform the Black community because they're the Black newsroom. But you should not be the Black newsroom if you're not going to be held to credible standards of journalism.
Exactly. And that's again, the realm where this, and again, in that article, you talk about it. You can read it for yourself. She talks about how it started. It started off as a celebrity gossip, channel on Instagram. And that was at a time where Instagram wasn't being used in that way. As we know, when Instagram was being started, it was being used to show pictures of, pretty people and food and landscapes and all of these different things. That's what Instagram was used for in the beginning. She saw a niche and was like, well, let's put this out there. And it started doing well. And you know what? And we're not mad at that. What we're saying is we understand now where you are, and now we have to hold you to account. Because you're using your platform with the millions of reach that you have that you say is a newsroom and it's not really a newsroom, and you're misleading people, you're lying, and you're just taking money from the highest bidder. And we could all understand making money, but to what cost? And again, if you're going to continue doing it, you're a private company, you can do whatever you want. No one's telling you to take it down, but we're saying is don't gaslight us into saying that this is something that's a conspiracy theory when in 2021 you have this article, you were cited saying this stuff. This isn't us saying it. This is us reporting as we do, because no one talks about this. Actually, this is the most investigative journalism that has been done since the Shade Room's inception. So I'm just saying. So if we really want to talk, let's talk about what we talk about. So that video, by the way, the video is gonna come. The video is gonna come because this is something that needs to be talked about. You have J.J. Williams. Is that his name? J.J. Williams?
Yes.
J.J. Williams took on the Shade Room and did something that we thought was unthinkable. He took them on, he held them to account, he made the video to the point where Angie, her damn self, reached out to J.J. Williams. If y'all don't know who J.J. Williams is, go ahead and find him. J. Williams J on Instagram and everywhere else. And he took
on TikTok and Twitter as well. His TikTok is actually his number one. TikTok is his platform. That is what made him famous. He has 1.1 million followers, and thank God that he does.
Yes, because that's the reach that we need to have. You know what I'm saying? And so when he took them on and held them to account, we need to do that shit more.
Brian, real briefly, it is a reach that we need to have, but we're never going to have that damn reach if you don't follow, like, and share. So if you're out here watching this live, whether you're watching it now, you're watching it later, or you're watching it in clips, stop, like, and follow and share the content. Like, let people go and, see this content, because we're trying to build up to get to that point. My best friend is here. Thank you. He follows. Share with your friends. Put it on social media. Just put it on social media. It's a damn shame that I have been doing this for 3 years. I don't have 1,000 followers. Is it an indication of poor content? Maybe. Is it an indication of unattractiveness? Maybe. But no. I'm not going away.
You're not
We're
gonna go
just
away.
getting started.
We just getting started, and this is the thing too. But because you have, I think y'all both have a tenth of his following on TikTok, but y'all still get the numbers. Y'all still get the numbers. I'm over here. I'm at a third of what the fuck y'all got going
Sir,
on.
you
But
just
here's
had a
what I
whole
will say.
video get over 200,000, over nearly 300,000 now
Yeah, I know,
views,
but
and I don't know how many thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of likes.
we need to
Because
go ahead. We need to go ahead and, and expand that and amplify that.
And that's
Because
coming up later in the show. That's coming up a little bit later in the show. What's not coming up later in the show is Brian's fellow brown man, Enrique Tarrio, who has now been sentenced to 22 years in prison for his role in the January 6th insurrection that they want to call breach of the Capitol and everything but what it was, by Senator, I'm sorry, by Judge, I want to say it's not David Kelly, but it's a Kelly, Judge Kelly. Judge
Justin
Timothy
Kelly,
Kelly.
Timothy Kelly.
Judge Timothy Kelly. Tell us about, Enrique is gone. He got some jail time. Well, wake up, Kenny. Shit, we ain't even close to finishing.
I just said, I'm just putting up my 22s. 22s, 22s
That's
in
right.
the air.
So and that's the video that's doing well right now. So and I didn't think this was gonna do just the numbers that it did, but people like it. So Enrique, because I'm gonna roll my R's because I can. Enrique Tarrio is a former leader of the Proud Boys, and also the district. What was he? The chairman for the Latinos for Trump in Florida. And so what I will say is that he got 22 years in prison, and they were actually the prosecutors were trying to get 33 years, but they ended up getting 22 years. Here's why this is important. He has the connection to January 6th. He wasn't there on January 6th because a couple days prior to January 6th, he was burning a Black Lives Matter banner from a DC church, and so he was booked. He had a magazine rifle, a rifle magazine, and that he had that was against policy as well. And he was taken, and he was told by the judge that he had to leave. So he wasn't there in January 6th. But the problem was that he was a massive, instrument in doing the actual plot, right? So sitting down with the Proud Boys and having more than 1,030 people. The most boots on the ground that day was 1,030 people that came from the Proud Boys, and it was because of his plot. It was because of his engineering, his machinations, thoughts, and so they got him for 22 years. It's funny because the next person after that got 18 years, right? And he was a Mexican American. What was his name? Let me go ahead and, as you know, I have my name. His name was Stuart Rhodes. The whitest fucking name, but he was a Mexican American. And Stuart Rhodes got 18 years. Why that's important is because the other two Proud Boys, Joseph Biggs, who got 17 years, and Zachary Real, who also got 15 years, were white men, and they got less time than a Afro-Cuban, right? Because he identified Enrique Tarrio and identifies as an Afro-Cuban. Motherfucker, you black. It is what it is, and you over here thought you can look at people down your fucking nose. And you can say that because I'm adjacent to whiteness, I am a leader of an organization that is a nationalist, white supremacist organization. You thought your ass was safe. You thought because you were partaking in the same shit that these extremist groups do that you were going to be safe. And motherfucker, nobody said shit, to your defense. You don't see Trump saying a damn thing about you, and you over here, you took the fall for Trump. You know what I'm saying? So how do you feel now? 22 damn years. Biggest sentence for anybody of the 1,000 people that were booked. I'm just saying.
Brian, what they say?
Fuck around and find out is what they say.
That's what the fuck they say.
Or complexion for the protection for the collection, and he lacks the complexion for the protection.
That's what I'm saying. But it's not
So
me saying.
So my question, Brian, from somebody who's part of the Latin community, what do we do to reach out to voters that are white adjacent who think like this, who particularly might be Latin, but however they think more conservative? Is it has something to do with faith? Does it have something to do with particular politics? Because I know there's a lot of anti-immigrant policies that Republicans continue to spew that would make me deter myself from voting for a Republican if I was Latinx. However, they continue to vote that way. Can you
Yeah.
kind of help me understand what's the rationale behind voting Republican if you're Latinx?
Yes, I mean, it is different. It's different. Latinos in Florida who are Cuban American have been used since the 1980s. Republican operatives started using communist rhetoric, anti-communist rhetoric, to change the perception of Fidel Castro. I mean, there's an ominous history there in Florida and how they use that, and so they made them fear communism, right? Because these people were coming here because they were persecuted, maybe because they were anti-Fidel, and so now they're here, and so they are now used as political pawns since the 1980s. And this is what I'm talking about. And I'm talking about Florida and Cubans specifically. This is what I'm talking about, how Republicans know strategic patience. They know incremental change. This is something that Democrats need to fucking understand. They need to take a page out of Republicans' book and understand that, again, you may not get a full change of heart over one fucking election cycle. Local election cycle, 2 years, 4 years, 6 years. You may have to wait 20, 25, 20, 30 years in order for you to get to that point where people have a change of mindset. And I think what needs to happen is there needs to be an interception, an interference of what they actually believe now, right? We need to expose them to a different perspective. That's what I did. And a lot of people looking at my video that is doing numbers right now, and they're like, well, what, you're just wasting your time. Nobody gives a fuck. Nobody's going to listen to you at the end of the day. But here's what it is. It's going to take multiple of those. That's just one interruption of thought, right? Where you put it in their fucking face and you say, look at what's going on, right? Because again, the Latino community is very large and it has a lot of subsections, and the reasons why they hate people who are darker than them range. But at the crux of it all was because Spaniards told their asses at one point, because that's what it is, right? Spaniards were the ones, and Portuguese people from the Iberian Peninsula, historically speaking, went into the Latin American countries, what we consider Latin American now, which that's fucking, debating right now, but whatever. You see them go into the Caribbean, and you see that they were the white people. They weren't the Englishmen who went to the north, right? And so they were the people there. And so with time, what ended up happening was it was the same shit. It was the same racist playbook. The darker you were, the worse you were. The lighter you were, the closer to God you were. That stayed the same. But so the lighter you were, they started making people passable. Like they literally have verbiage of them telling people that, them saying, oh, well, you pass, you're good, And so that created the colorism divide that exists now in the Latino community all around the world. And so that shit needs to be talked about. I don't see many people talking about that, to be honest with you. You know what I'm saying? And for me, I take it personally. I really do, because I identify as Afro-Latino. People look at me and they fucking think I'm fucking Pakistani, or they think I'm Indian, or they think I'm fucking Saudi Arabian, or they think I'm Egyptian, or they think I'm fucking, I've gotten it all. But I identify as Afro-Latino. I'm Puerto Rican and South Asian, because I'm Puerto Rican and I'm Sri Lankan. It is what it is. But I feel like we have to talk to people and they understand, when you coming from the same fucking community, when you can talk to them.
I think that's perfect. I'm gonna say this is gonna be extremely controversial, but I think that you absolutely 100% right. I think it's so often people want to put the blame on religion, but we just saw the Pope come out and call out American Catholics for what they are doing to pervert the faith. And I have seen very few people challenge it or rail against it, or or support it. I've seen very few people talk about it and support what this Pope has said. It's kind of just being ignored. And to me, that reinforces the notion that this is also racism, that this is also about being adjacent to whiteness. This is also about the approval of the white validity. That's what a lot of it seems to be stemmed in, but I don't know that. It's just a theory because I'm not Latino.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it is what it is. But again, it's not from my perspective, it's not a religious thing. Like you look at Texas as another example, right? You have a large Mexican American population, and they don't even consider themselves Mexican. They don't even consider themselves. They call themselves Tejanos. They're natives to that region. So they're called Texans. In Spanish, it's Tejanos. That's what they call themselves. And based on, you look at the research, you look at years of brick and mortar buildings that these Republicans are spending money on. They're spending ad dollars. They're spending, time, energy, effort, capital, which is their people. And they're going into these communities and having these conversations over decades of time. Then you see everybody around them who are also conservative and white as fuck. And that's why they all have those, and they have those same beliefs. So it's different.
Kenny,
Sure.
Brian brings up a great point. Now, Brian says, now you know where I'm finna go, because you know how I feel about the DNC. Like Brian brought up right to the fact that Republicans are putting money in those communities and putting in time in the communities. It was a 30+ year strategy to ensure that Cuban Americans were faithful to the Republican Party. And they're implementing similar type strategies in Texas and other parts of the country that are battleground states, with the realization that it's going to take time. Democrats are not making the same level of investment that, in Zack's opinion. Let me give you my evidence. My evidence for that is in the state of Georgia, the Republican Party has implemented these massive offices, Republican offices in heavy areas of Metro Atlanta that are Latino. They have their offices. They're hiring Latinos to work in the offices, to be on the ground throughout the course of the year. Zero presence from Democrats that I've been able to find and see in my research. The exact same thing. I look at Julian Castro, who disagreed and definitely did some dirty play in the 2020 primary season, but to me was a major, or could have been a much stronger advocate for the Democratic Party had he had a place in the Biden administration. I think those are missteps that Democrats have made and missed opportunities that they keep missing to build better inroads with some portions of our Hispanic community.
And let me say this, and then I want to go to Kenny because I want to hear his perspective on this. Part of me thinks, because I think I'm a problem solver, I like to look at solutions. I like to think about questions that can really get to the crux of the problem. Part of me thinks they just think that this is not going to be worth their time, energy, or effort in this moment. And I think that, again, that's the short-sighted perspective that I think people are taking, that they need to understand. They need to break that shit. It just is what it is. The current, and that's what I asked the last show. Do we have the current consultants? Do we have the current strategic planners to be in the space to think about these questions long-term? We need to understand that this is not something that we're going to change overnight. We need to understand that, yes, you may have to spend $5 million, $6 million in Texas, even though you think it's not going to be a fucking battleground state. You don't think that it's going to be a swing state. Yes, it's okay. That's fine. You're going to have to do that. It is what it is. I understand what people say, like, and I understand there's a difference. And don't get me wrong. There is a difference between saying, don't spend your money on a Marjorie Taylor Greene district for, what was his name? Marcus Flowers. Don't spend your money for Marcus Flowers. Even though I bought the fucking t-shirt.
Big bro Marcus.
It's a different thing to say. And again, I bought the teacher because I thought the teacher was cool. I knew he had no chance in hell. There's a difference to say, spend your money on Marcus Flowers or Charlie Crist in Florida when he had no chance in hell, versus saying, I'm, as an institution of a party, and we have a two-party system in this country, I need to spend X amount of dollars to get an X amount of return of investment, because I know that next year I'm going to do the same thing, and the year after that I'm going to do the same thing, and the year after that, it's going to be the fucking same thing, because the long game is that we're going to fucking win this district if we really want it, or we're going to win this state if we really want it. And I think that that's the difference.
All right, here's my idea. So as far as what I would like to see the DNC and with Democrats to do, is we literally had over 100 million eligible voters that didn't vote in 2020. What I want to see is an investment of those people who are actually registered and were eligible to vote that chose not to vote. I want to see a massive chain of being able to reach out to those particular voters. And the problem is the way the DNC likes to run things, it's outdated. They don't know how to talk to people anymore. And what I would like to see happen is for people like me who have the shared experiences that can speak on behalf of those people in those communities and are actually speaking to those people in those communities. And it can actually share that commonality with them to where they're actually be able to like, okay, now I get it. The amount of time and effort that I've used my platform reaching out to people and explaining policy in layman's terms on a third grade level so everybody can understand rather than me talking over people's heads, it has broken through. There's a lot of people who didn't honestly like, I don't care. I don't care about this. I just did a video about Ukraine. I've got a whole lot of feedback about that saying, oh my God, I finally get it now. Oh, they're only using 5% of the military budget that already exists. They're not actually just giving them a check. They're sending old military weapons. They're not sending them, Fendi products or sending them Ivy Park and they ride around in Bentleys. They ride around in tanks, baby. So I would like them to learn how to talk to people. They need people who literally look like the community, who are from that community, speaking to the community. So that way the community can be more engaged and understand what's actually going on. The problem is Americans, we don't understand civics. It's just number one. We don't understand it. Unfortunately, we're going to have to walk people with baby steps and hold their hand through this political process and let them know what's going on and why we're doing it. And we need to explain it on why we're doing this, how the system is structured, what to expect so they have the right expectations on what the government is supposed to actually be giving the American people. And I think that's where the problem is. There's so many pain points that people don't understand the process to where when things don't go a certain way that they expected, it's up to the representatives to explain to constituents how this process plays and let them have the right expectation on what to expect from whatever we're supposed to be promoting.
And to combat the misinformation, which is what we're going to talk about in a moment, because we're getting ready to talk about CNN. And to me, what they recently did and what they've been reporting on recently, this SSR poll, whatever SSI poll, this is, to me, almost as egregious as anything I've ever seen on Fox News. Like this is, and so that's coming up next. But I do want to, Lucky, thank you for joining in. We agree that this is a necessary space. We're thankful to have it, thankful to be able to do it, happy to take the time to make this happen on a regular basis. And I think you bring up a good point about reinvesting in our own communities and what we do to do that. And that's where we put our money where our mouth is. And it's also about supporting those people that share our views and wants and needs into office. And that's a great place to share that. Our social media friend, Isaiah Martin, who is a TikToker, who's a major voice on Twitter, who's been a strong fighter and advocate for change in the state of Texas, has announced this week that he is running for what's her name? He's running for? Is it Sheila Jackson Lee? Sheila Jackson Lee's seat in the state of Houston, the Metro Houston area. He's running for a House of Representative seat. And to me, I made a pledge, like he announced yesterday, and it was his first day. He wanted to get as many donors as possible. I gave my $100 to the young man last night, wanting to be a seed for the campaign, like one of the very first people. Will be allocating funds to his campaign. I have been very vocal about not donating to state people in Georgia. If I don't know you personally, I have been very vocal that I am not supporting the Georgia Democratic Party, and I am not supporting Georgia Democratic candidates unless they have vocally stood up against the Cop City movement in this state. So the funds that I allocate to campaigns and to people I believe in Georgia will no longer happen. I'm reallocating that out to people like Isaiah, people that I think have a chance of winning, a very strong chance, and who will, because that's a Democratic seat. He just has to win his Democratic primary, and who I think will make a difference. So this is a good chance for anyone watching now or later to consider donating to this young man's campaign. I think that he is the type of change maker who will make a difference.
And we actually had him on the rundown, you guys. So
that's right. And he did a great job. He's a great candidate. He's the real deal.
He's a good communicator. It's very important to have that.
But you know what's not the real deal? CNN. CNN is not the real deal. This week we had this is the breaking news. I'm gonna make it real big for everybody if you can't read it, so apologize. And this is what it says, is that CNN broke this out as breaking news. They've been running it continuously throughout the course of this week, where they're talking about a record low number of Americans say that President Biden inspires confidence. This is from a new poll that came out from CNN, but then we found out that their sample was exceptionally skewed. Before we go into how skewed the sample was, I just want to open the floor, Jim, and see what your thoughts are, because our girl Tiffany has done a phenomenal job of breaking this down like she does with all of these polls to like the granular T. I'm so thankful I know her. She's amazing in what she's done, but I just want to open up before we kind of go into some of that, how we know this is fucked up.
Well, I will say that. Oh, go ahead, Kenny.
Well, the whole thing about CNN is they held a whole town hall for a known insurrectionist, 2-time impeached, 4 times indicted president, where they literally stacked the audience in his favor, full of MAGA supporters. So this isn't new. CNN is very, they're known for this type of smoke and mirrors. They like to play on the intelligence of the American people because they wanted a skewed poll, because they wanted to be closer as possible. A lot of people are missing out on the money they made with Donald Trump. Joe Biden is so oatmeal, so Quaker Oats, and so boring. But I love boring. This is the first time I've had peace without having to wonder what's going on, if somebody's going to try to strip away my health care, or if somebody's going to try to strip away some sort of other rights that I have from me. So as far as CNN, they want chaos. Their goal is to drive engagement. And the most views they got is when Trump was in office. The more books they sold was when Trump was in office. The more interviews they've gotten was when Trump was in office. It's way more profitable to watch the world burn than actually report on the gospel, which is the good news.
And go out there and actually find real news to report on that could actually make a difference in the lives of Americans. We have horrible things happening to people every single day that if it could get exposed, if it could get the attention, we could turn around this entire, we could possibly stop some human trafficking if there was more opportunities on the news and mainstream media to report that. But all they want to talk about is Donald Trump 24 hours a day. And Kenny, you have hit the nail on the head when you talk about the fact that the news cycle is dominated by a desire to have ratings and a desire to have clicks and views, and they won't get that. They don't let us constantly stay in a state of constant panic and turmoil. The majority of Americans are Democrat. The majority of Americans by population have voted for the Democratic candidate consistently since the 2000 election. More Americans voted for Al Gore. More Americans voted for Barack Hussein Obama. More Americans voted for Hillary Clinton. And more Americans voted for Joseph Robinette Biden. These are facts. So we are the majority in this country, hands down. And they're constantly trying to keep us glued in with hypotheticals and conjecture that causes, to me, a lot of unnecessary trauma. Brian, I know that you wanted to chime in.
Yeah, I mean, let me say this. You hit the nail on the head when you talk about how these, how we're the majority. Because if you look at the polls, because I know we were going to talk about that, the polls look, first of all, don't trust the polls at this point or closer to the election, because again, we have to ask the question, who is being polled, right? Even when you look at those breakdowns of numbers, you have to see, again, what share, right, of the people are of a specific party. They self-identify. And so a lot of people don't go into the crosstabs. A lot of people don't look at the fine print and see that some of these polls are heavily Republican, right? When you look at polls that have larger sample sizes, when you have a poll that has, let's say 1,000 people, you may have, Biden versus Trump on a general election poll, and it says Trump is up, right? You break that down, and you see that there's maybe a higher Republican number. That's number one. But number two, when you have sample sizes that are 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 people, you start seeing what Zack is talking about. The fact that we outnumber Republicans. The fact that people who have liberal mindsets, who are more pragmatic, who are more sometimes in the middle, that we have independence. Because again, let's also see this. You have people who are extremely right, extremely left, and who will look at the candidate. If the candidate has a D, they're voting for the candidate. If you're a liberal, you're going to vote for the candidate. If you're a Republican, you're going to vote for, just because you see the R or you see the D, the designation next to their name that talks about what party they're from, you're going to vote for them. You have to talk about the larger majority of people which are in the middle, and those are the independents. Those are the people you need to sway, because the people who are going to vote against you are going to vote against you no matter what. And so when you look at the people who caucus with the liberals or who have a more liberal mindset, we outnumber them. The question is not if, it's when. We have to get people out there to vote. It just is what it is. That is the goal. That is the number one thing. Who is going to excite people to get out to vote? who's going to have a popular message that's going to say, I can get behind this? Who's going to be strategic enough to say, how do we get this message to the people instead of just from behind the desk, right? We have to ask those questions. And that's how we get to the place. I have always said this. The key to solving the world's problems, there's just one answer. And it's simple. And it may not be the answer that you're thinking of, but it's the number one answer, which is having a civically informed and engaged electorate. If you have 100% of the entire U.S. population going out who is eligible to vote, go out and vote, and they're actually informed about who to vote for, we win. That's it. That's the answer to solving all of this. And so that's why we spend all of our time, energy, time, talent, and treasure with fucking, that's what it is, time, talent, and treasure, to get the fuck up on here as a labor of love, to make these fucking videos that we not motherfucking getting paid for, okay? To get the fucking message out to people who don't have the necessary knowledge, exposure, or expertise to understand these topics. That's why we say it in the ways that we say it, because we're trying to get the message to the people who may not understand, who may not have gone to college and got the fucking political science degree, who may not fucking have gotten the civics fucking education when they were younger. That's why we do the fucking shit that we do. And so that's just my take on it. And that's always going to be my fucking take on it. That's not going to change.
But look at that sample size, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's break it down, because again, like, this is horrible. And I get it. You know, you can get away with 100 people sample or 1,000 people sample, right? They did 1,503, and that's fine. But here's a problem. You got, of the 1,503, only 12, almost a little over 1,200 were registered voters. But this is the problem. The survey included an oversample of 898 Republicans. Okay, of 1,200 people sampled, almost 900 of them were Republican or Republican-leaning independents. That right there completely made this whole entire poll invalid and pointless. Right then and there off the bat. Results among the full sample have a margin of sampling error of plus or minus 2.5 points. Again, this was the bottom line for me that says this is pointless and holds absolutely no weight whatsoever. And the truth of the matter is, if you really want to break it down, this actually made it look a lot better for President Biden, because of this almost 900 Republican sample, he still has the lead in terms of favorability over Donald Trump in terms of who they would be willing to vote for. So people aren't talking about that. People aren't pointing that part. I took some other notes, right? So if you have this with over 60% of them being surveyed as Republicans and only 40% of them found that he's unfavorable, that means that 100% of the Democrats sampled found that President Biden has done a good job and has a favorable job rating. That is definitely a portent of doom and gloom for Republicans, where only 30% of Americans in this country truly identify as Republican. I think that President Biden is looking good as we approach 2024.
Let me just say one thing about CNN or all these news outlets and all these pollsters. You continuously get it wrong. You haven't gotten anything right since 2012, and even that was still kind of off. And it literally in 2020, we were supposed to lose. In 2022, we were supposed to get our asses whooped when it came to the midterm election. That didn't happen. We were supposed to lose the Senate. That didn't happen. We gained a seat. You guys are continuously getting it wrong. And you think that somehow this is going to deter people from showing up to the polls, when actually you're actually inciting us to actually go to the polls just to prove you wrong. And we'll do it again in 2024, just so you know, if you're watching.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Not if CNN has anything to do with it. This will be, again, I don't watch CNN, will not watch CNN, will not support them, but we need more people to get on that boycott. This was a level of Fox News misinformation, and it really needs to be called out, and more people need to be kind of fighting it. Lucky, you bring up a good point. I'll say this for me, like Lucky says, interesting point. Do you think Trump was necessary for this conversation to happen? Like Black Lives Matter, all these things. I'll say this: Black Lives Matter and Donald Trump opened my eyes to a lot of things about America that I was choosing not to see. I didn't understand the alt-right pipeline, the alt-right movement, and the absolute growth of racism in America to like be at such a fever pitch. I didn't recognize people that I worked with, lived around, had been friends with for, decades, that they really were truly at their heart racist. I also didn't understand the factors like the white replacement theory that was contributing to their racism. All of it at the end of the day brings me great disappointment in America and people, as well as a lot of sadness for them that they have become susceptible to such types of manipulation from the media. And the fact that we live in a country that allows it, the fact that CNN is still on the airwaves, the fact that CNN is going in the direction of Fox News because it is profitable for them to do so, is all of that. None of that should be happening in America. None of this is American. It shouldn't be happening.
Absolutely. 100%. And again, going back to Kenny's point, these pollsters have gotten it wrong since, you know what I'm saying, 2016, you saw 530, and that's why, fuck 538. What's his name? Steven, whatever his fucking name is.
It used to be Nate Silver, but all his teeth
What's
fell
his
out.
name? I've seen enough.
Yeah,
What's his name?
Yes, Nate Silver. All his teeth fell out and he got fired.
That's right.
No, it was another one. I've seen enough. I forgot his name. I have to go look him up.
I will say the one that I do like, which is the aggregate of all the polls. I like looking at, I'm not gonna be honest, I like looking at Real Clear Politics. I like looking at their platform because they have the aggregate. But even then, we read the fine print. And again, not everybody's into that. Not everybody has the desire to do that. And that's fine. But if you go to it and you look at the sample sizes and you see that they're lower, you're gonna see those. And sometimes they overpopulate and they oversaturate, which is the other thing. I need y'all to understand this point because I don't think we're talking about this. There are Republican operatives who will go and pay for all of these polls to be done, right? And oversize the samples to show skews for the Republican side so that they can oversaturate the aggregate, which is all of them together, to show that one candidate is winning over the other. And what they're intending to do is for you to go there to look at the polls, see the averages, and say, well, my candidate can't win anyway. So why should I go out to vote? It's voter disinformation. It is trying to dissuade you from voting, and it's voter suppression at its finest. These are tactics that are used for the people who don't know. That's what's going on. And so that's why we consistently say, don't look at the polls. Get your ass up and vote. Bring your friend, bring your family member, because that's the only way we're going to get it done. At the end of the day, you can have a 99%, which is what it was. The day of, in 2016, Nate Silver's 538, I will never forget that shit, and I'll never fucking forgive you for that shit. 538 said 99% Hillary Clinton was going to win. Up to the day of the fucking election. At the end of the day, what matters is the votes that are counted, that are tabulated, and that are taken to the fucking county, and that are then taken to show that we need to get these electoral votes in the process and all of that. That's what matters. So don't look at all that shit. Fuck the noise, and get on with your business and go vote. Vote early.
Look at the hat. Don't look at the polls. Look at the hat. Don't look at the polls.
That's what I'm saying. But her emails, though. So am I fucking wrong?
No.
Am I wasting my time up here?
No. What Nate Silver has messed it up in both the last two elections. What he said in 2016 encouraged people who, Hillary voters across America just thought, okay, it's no big deal. I don't have to get out and vote. She's going to win. It's guaranteed. And she lost. And, that was a part, he contributed to that. And again, if he would have had his way, or if 538 would have had their way, President Biden would have lost too, because they were very wrong in so many situations, even as recently as the 2022 midterms. So as we get ready to approach the conclusion, I did have a little this prepared to talk about here, because you guys did have some great content. If you guys do not follow Mentally Divine on all platforms, please do so, especially his TikTok. He has recently broken through to the Creativity Beta program, where his content is able to be monetized, and he's a damn proud boy, but not like Enrique Tarrio as a proud boy. And so we definitely want to support him as he continues to roll those R's. I guess we all found out what that tongue do. And Kenny came through with this excellent rendition of Nikki Haley, his excellent impersonation of Nikki Haley. Kenny, that was ridiculous.
I know
That
it
fucking
was.
nigga.
I'm over the top, but I just like to over exaggerate what is actually on their mind.
What I thought was also funny was how the algorithm at first thought you were
Christian Walker.
Christian Walker. You did sound a lot like him in this.
But no, can we talk about this real quick? So I was confused about the search up there on the top. It said Joe Biden cotton picking. Apparently, there is a misinformation that was pushed out from, I think it's some sort of it's like some sort of blog. It's not real, but they make memes out of real news. And they said that Joe Biden is paying African Americans $300 an hour to pick cotton. And apparently that's gotten viral on TikTok, and it's misinformation. And I didn't know anything about it until I saw this pop up
Kenny,
under my video.
I know you lying. People
I
can't
am
believe
not
that.
playing.
You are lying to me that there are people in this world that think that Joe Biden is paying black people to pick cotton.
They said because he is bragging about how many new jobs are created, he's got a new job for us, which is literally picking cotton for $300 an hour. And some people are saying, like, well, I'm doing the math here, and that's about $500,000 a year. And they ready to go out there in the field. Child, I don't know if I should comment on this or ignore it, but it depends on how wild this goes. But I have the receipt that's proven that this is actually from a meme site that also said that the WNBA is going to be playing basketball with no shirt or no bra, so topless. The same media site that put out the misinformation on Biden.
But is this a satirical, like
it's satire?
Like,
but some people think it's real, and they didn't even read the article that was fact checking it. They said,
Oh,
it's really real, you guys. They just put they read the headline and they didn't read the full article. At the bottom, it says this is not real. This was actually satire. It was a meme.
What is the other one? Is it The Onion? Is that the satirical
Well, that's the good satire. Like The Onion's been around for a long time. They've done decent humorous work in their existence.
Hold on, I actually have it. Let me see if I can. Give me 2 seconds and I can pull it up for you guys because I have it. Because I was gonna, I save everything just in case.
You sure do.
All right. Okay,
Zack,
it's called Hood News. That is the source.
And this is on where?
Hood News. Okay, the headline comes from an Instagram account, Hood News, which, according to its description, provides the best memes and fake news posts daily.
Hood News, hood.news _.
But it's also Newsweek, they debunked it. So when somebody posted in the headline, they posted the headline of Newsweek, but they didn't finish reading the full article.
Wait a minute, hold on. Hood News
said that Joe Biden is giving $300 an hour if black people go pick cotton.
At Hood News TV?
No, it's just Hood News.
It doesn't even matter. We don't want you to go to that website and give them any clicks and views. And we sure as hell don't want anyone who sees us online to go to the website and give them any clicks and views. It's garbage, it's satire, and people should have the wherewithal to recognize that it is fake news. And the fact that they don't indicates that, we are not improving outcomes for America's educational system. We got a lot of work to do in that regard. And I blame Betsy DeVos. When you put Betsy DeVos's ass in there, Secretary of Education, we should have known it was all going to go downhill and go downhill fast as it has done. Wow. So with that being said, gentlemen, any other news that we should have brought to the table that you guys had on your mind that you saw that popped up before we made our decisions?
There is one. There's pop culture that's not political. Steve Harvey's was Steve Harvey's guest. What is her name? Fucking
Miss Strawberry, the co-host.
Yes, is that her name? Miss. No, she's Miss something.
I thought it was strawberry or something with strawberry.
I don't know. The whole point is that it's going viral now because she was caught on tape talking shit about Marjorie, saying that that Steve Harvey is scared of Marjorie, and that she has I heard the tape that she has a spa in the house, and so she has all these people come over and like give her massages, and she's like, "Oh, what a dream!" And she, at some point, she did say that she's scared, or she's considered that he considers her the help, or something like that. I don't know what the fuck was
His
going
wife?
on.
No, strawberry.
Yes,
It's Shirley Strawberry. Okay. Steve
Strawberry.
Harvey's radio co-host is Shirley Strawberry, and she claims that he is scared of his wife Marjorie, and that Marjorie looks at Shirley like she ain't nothing but the help. And that is what they're saying. I don't know Steve Harvey's wife. This is his second wife, right? This isn't the wife of like Lori Harvey. This isn't the mother of Lori Harvey, is it?
Not that I
No.
know of.
This is Marjorie. I think she's like the third, or like whatever.
Well,
I
she
mean,
ain't
I think it's a
too.
third.
She, he's not too scared of her because didn't he get caught cheating recently?
No, that was a lie.
No,
He
that was a
actually
lie.
came out and spoke and said that he doesn't
Oh,
even
okay.
know where that even came from. So he actually did address it.
Okay, it's allegedly. So I
Child,
apologize, Steve. I apologize. I don't watch your shows though, bro. I don't
child,
watch. I
Steve.
apologize.
don't watch Steve Harvey.
Look, I only watched Family Feud. After that, I stopped watching him when he showed up at Trump Tower. But other than that, that was the
And
end
that's
of that.
exactly why I don't watch. The fact that he showed up at Trump Tower, the fact that he works for Trump and hosts the Miss World Universe, whatever, where Kenya Moore won or whatever. I'm not watching. I'm not supporting Steve Harvey.
Kenya Moore won?
She won Miss USA back in the day. If Steve Harvey was put over Jeopardy, I'm going. And I record every episode of Jeopardy. I'm gonna stop watching Jeopardy.
He's a good co-host for comedy and family, family fun TVs and stuff like that. Like the game shows, he's perfect for it. I mean, he's got the perfect commentary for it. He's hilarious. But I won't be supporting half of his shit. No. Like it's stuff that no.
He's just very, he's Steve Harvey. I'm gonna be honest with you. I got some love for him, but he's like just an older uncle that is anti-LGBT. Like he that type, like, oh, keep that gay shit away from me. He's that type of a person.
But nobody wants him. Like we don't want
And
that.
but people don't call that out. People don't bring up his homophobic trends to the table. And yeah, I'm not a fan.
But plus you're Team Monique, Brian. So
Brian is Team Monique.
Oh, 10,000%.
That's true. He are Team Monique. Kenny, is there anything that you saw in the news that was worthy of note?
No, I ain't say anything that I would like to touch on. I think I kind of hit all my talking points tonight.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything else that is just like urgent to call out for the week. Anything else, I guess we could hold it. It could become content. We could hold it over. So, all right, gentlemen, thank you guys for a great show. It's up live, and I'm gonna see if I can find a way to make it from live to like where it appears on the general stream. So we'll see. So, all right, guys, we will, I guess, convene next week.
All right.
See you next week, next Thursday.